People who work in human resources, what is the weirdest crap you have seen? A couple stories I remember from different companies. 1. One gentleman decided to go around their office showing people CP to warn them not to let strangers around their kids. 2. One employee walked in on another employee full-on masturbating in the bathroom. The company did not want to fire the masturbating employee. Number 1 sounds like the half-baked excuse he came up with when he was caught. Straight to the police with that one. While firing someone and listing off the reasons they were being termed, the person goes, "Yeah, I mean I did that, but you don't have to fire me, yo. I didn't violate a procedure and it doesn't say no sex in our code of conduct," exact quote. What was he being fired for? Having sex with a building sec guard in the parking lot of our building, and it was all recorded on surveillance. Tech company. Guy harassed a customer at our own company's product showcase conference. Customer complained and it went directly to the CEO. Guy was fired the next day. His boss tried to argue it wasn't that big of deal and we shouldn't fire him, and tried to leverage himself. "If he goes then I'll go." Spoiler, they both went. My mum once represented a primary school caretaker, janitor, at a disciplinary meeting. He'd filmed himself fricking his girlfriend on the school premises with the school camera and left the tape in it, where it was subsequently found by another member of staff. Obviously he was immediately suspended and they took the keys to the building off of him. So he broke into the school that night to try and get the tape back. Needless to say, he didn't keep the job. We had a cashier who refused to work at a certain register because it was enclosed while all the others were open. Her reason was that one of the sales clerks in the hardware department was waiting for the right moment to murder her, and she wanted to be able to have an escape route when it happened. How did she know the clerk, who she never really interacted with, was planning on killing her? You can just see it in his eyes. She didn't want us to solve her problem with the murderous clerk. Mind you, she just wanted a fighting chance of escape when the inevitable happened. That employee's doctor soon took her off work for quite some time to get her meds straight. Not in HR, but hiring manager. The candidate made a remark that made me do a double take. Don't remember exactly what, just a small cue that I picked up on. I made sure he understood that we will not tolerate any racism at all, and he proceeds to rattle off multiple racial slurs to show how he can't be racist if he is comfortable enough to use those words. Obviously didn't get hired, so he proceeded to contact our HR department to complain that I somehow tricked him into saying what he said. SMH. We had a woman who was terrible at her job, always off sick, never met a deadline. Anyway, protocol was followed. Because some people had given her half-decent staff reviews to get rid of her, she called in the union to support her. This dragged the process. Then when she got the final papers, she sent them back saying she couldn't be fired. She was pregnant. This woman was 54. It turned out she had frozen eggs, so she defrosted them, etc. The process proving no discrimination then began. 6 months go by. She gets served again. We worked at an organization. Big building in Manhattan, hence terrible bureaucracy. Papers come back. That isn't me you've sent the documents to. Turns out she had provided a false passport when hired. She was actually in her 60s. In the end they gave her early retirement to get it over with. Amazing how hard some people will work to be lazy. This happened a couple of years ago when I worked in HR at a smallish company. It was Memorial Day weekend and I was typing away on the computer when all of a sudden I heard someone very loudly say, "Oh my god, what?" This employee proceeds to go into a conference room so that their voice is muffled, but they scream again and loudly say, "Well, did they recover the body?" I hear rustling from around my cube and same employee talks to their boss, wishes them a happy Memorial Day weekend and that they got to leave early. This employee proceeds to wish me and a few other of my co-workers a cheery happy Memorial Day weekend and leaves. My mind races thinking I'm going to have to report said employee for being an accomplice to murder or something. But a few minutes later, from my cube, I overhear a couple of other employees talk about how said employee had to leave because one of their friends who was visiting had fallen into the ground. Later at lunch, I'm talking with my co-workers about the situation when my co-worker casually says, "Oh yeah, my uncle died the same way." She goes further to explain that her family was from a different country and that whenever she talks to her mom, who lives in a different country, about going hiking, 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 about going hiking. A few other weird things happened while I was working at that same company, including me having to do a more intense background check on someone because they had the same name as someone on a wanted list of some sort, and a weird older guy creeping on the interns. HR stole me for a couple weeks after an angry prostitute tried driving through one of our gates looking for Anthony. She'd met him on a dating site and he owed her $350 and a car for her abortion. We didn't have an Anthony working there, but many of the other details she gave the police in her statement led the company to believe she wasn't totally delusional. HR picked on me because my last job, before becoming management, was IT. I spent 2 days walking around to every PC at my location, updating proxy settings, telling my co-workers that I'd figured out how to make email faster. I felt like an idiot, but it worked. The next 12 days I watched a squid proxy. I nailed Anthony on day 1, but HR kept me at it. The company had a guy looking for pictures of animal feces on plates. He claimed it was for a college art project, but the man was over 60 and not having the company pay for any courses. Mixed breed terrier on Corel saucer. One of the images he looked at officially counts as the weirdest crap I've ever seen. Mixed breed terrier on Corel saucer. One of the images he looked at officially counts as the weirdest crap I've ever seen. This is a guy that's seen a bunch of different shoots, so I believe him. I'm not in HR, but in my first management position I was reported to HR for being too tall. I'm a 6-foot woman. An older woman, who was probably 5'8" or 5'9", reported me because I tower over people when I talk to them. I had my meeting with HR, heard her complaint, then proceeded to wear platform wedge shoes for the next week. Not in HR, but my first real job as an adult. I showed up and sat in the parking lot waiting for the hiring manager to show up for over an hour on my first day. Finally someone else showed up to unlock the door and start my training. Turns out the manager that hired me had been killed by an alligator over the weekend. Frickin' Florida, man. My wife is an hour manager. In her company, they had a guy that was repeatedly caught masturbating in the shared bathroom. He was repeatedly caught because his sessions included him A, moaning out loud, B, not cleaning up after he was finished. Yes, you read that correctly. The trouble was, he was a very highly skilled machine operator and had many years of experience on a machine that was critical to their manufacturing process, which delivered parts to a very lucrative customer. They couldn't fire him, and he knew it. After being brought into HR several times for the same issue, it became clear that he wasn't going to stop. He even went directly from a meeting with HR to the bathroom for another session. My wife tried to fire the guy many times. They simply couldn't without bringing their process to a halt, missing deadlines and orders, and pee off their largest customer. The end solution? They hired a guy right out of trade school, explained the situation to him and offered him a huge increase in pay if he could learn this guy's job and eventually replace him. It took 2+ years, made more difficult by the guy figuring out that he was training his replacement somewhere in the middle of the process. It worked though, and the new kid more than doubled his pay by taking over from this guy. The masturbator had the audacity to file for unemployment after he was let go. My wife tried to fire the guy many times. They simply couldn't without bringing their process to a halt, missing deadlines and orders, and pee off their largest customer. The graveyards are full of indispensable men. It's never a good idea for any operation to be dependent on one person. Anyone can suddenly become unavailable for a number of reasons. Not HR, but I worked on the help desk. I was speaking to a guy over the phone one day and asked him to call me back the next day. Mind you, this guy never missed a call. Fastest hand in the West. I didn't get a call back and didn't think much of it. Dude was probably busy. I was checking the ticket queue and saw his name and was like, trying to pull a fast one and not reply to me and log a ticket. I was wrong. He died in his sleep. I had to disable his account. I've never told anyone about this, not even the people I worked with, but it was really painful to do. I sent a "so sorry" etc email to the team and they replied with thanks and their stories of them. I didn't have the heart to reply to them and left them unread with the intention to reply one day. I've since left that company and I wish I said my goodbyes to them. Not HR, but I worked on the help desk. Welp. Not HR, but I had to fly on short notice to Norway to hammer some bugs out of a system at a customer site over a 24-hour period. As I was heading back to my hotel for a few hours sleep before my flight home, I was asked to redirect to another site across country as one of our engineers had gone missing at some point over the weekend. He hadn't turned up at the customer site on Saturday night, and the 3 guys he was working with hadn't heard from him. I arrived there early on Sunday morning and had to do the rounds of the hotel, bars, embassy, hospitals, and finally the police station, where the dumb crap had gotten himself locked up, lied about his identity, and was being charged with assault. A few hours on the phone to get his room packed up and flights arranged to let the deportation proceed in an orderly fashion. He still can't go back there, and God knows what the hotel staff must have thought when I rocked up, asking for a manager to let me into his room as we didn't know if this bloke had topped himself in the bathtub. Fun times. I'm not in HR, but I did conduct interviews at a previous job. Literal blood on his resume. I think it was from picking a scab rather than a decent wound, but 100% handed me a bloody resume. Someone recently applied for an open job we have, and the email address she used to contact us had the display name Petty Barbie with dem curves, LPT. Create a professional sounding email address for situations like this. If you do have a professional sounding email address already, don't forget to use it. A friend of mine was hiring. A gal walks into the interview with a bug that she found outside. My friend said during the entire interview, she was watching it crawl around on her hands. She would talk to the bug when she answered his questions, never once making eye contact with him. Oh man, I've been waiting for this one. 2 words, dong tag. I don't know who started dong tag, but it became a very popular game very quickly. The whole gist of dong tag was pretty simple. You popped out your dong and showed it to another employee. Whoever saw the dong was it. To not be it, you had to pop your dong out and show it to someone else. I had heard whisperings, but people denied that it was a thing, and I never witnessed anything, so the only thing I could do was to send out an email to remind people of appropriate office behavior. Until then, dong tag continued until one day, it was taken too far. One of our managers, we'll call him Kyle, was an idiot. Kyle decided that the best way to welcome a new employee into the company was to induct him into dong tag. So while this poor kid was filling out his new hire paperwork, Kyle pulls down his pants, dumps his dong on the table, and yells "Your IT." Around the same time as this is happening, multiple employees in our parking lot are also playing dong tag. Our lovely and super sweet accounts payable lady, Ronnie, was walking into work and got caught in the crossfire. Here is this woman, who is super religious and has been with the same man her entire life and clutches her pearls at the sight of a shirtless man, and within seconds, has this barrage of dongs coming at her. First thing in the morning, no less. Ronnie walked into my office like she had seen the devil himself commit kitten genocide, but before she even got a chance to explain, the new kid walked in after her, handed me back the new hire paperwork, told me what happened and that this probably wasn't going to be a good fit for him job-wise, and then left. Ronnie then launched into her story about the absolute indecency and how she doesn't know if she can even look her husband in the eye after seeing what she saw. After soothing Ronnie, I call Kyle up. He explains his side, the rules of the game, and rats out who is playing. Kyle is then fired. That Friday, a company-wide memo goes out banning dong tag. We have multiple training sessions on sexual harassment, and I have to tell 50 grown men that it's not okay to take your penis out at work. So yeah. Someone was asked to file the freshly negotiated contracts. In context, this meant to lodge them with the relevant government authority to be processed. Someone proceeded to put them in his filing cabinet because he was asked to file contracts. It was me. 15 years ago. I'm someone. It's been 15 years. They're still in the filing cabinet. Was recruiting for an entry-level job. Think an administrator at a call center, and I gave a candidate a call to request an in-person interview. Call went to voicemail and her greeting was her rapping about her lingerie business. Several team members gave her a call that day to hear to the greeting. Another employee once asks me for his own private room in a shared office space because he farted a lot. I've seen a few comments in here from people who weren't necessarily in HR but who were in charge of hiring. so I figured I'd share my weirdest story. I was conducting an interview with a candidate who had previously worked for 5 years as a science teacher. I work in pharma, so I was curious as to why he was leaving his current position, and without skipping a beat, he started going into the legal troubles he was facing. I immediately tried to stop him from going into details since it could cause legal issues for us, particularly if we chose not to hire. He pressed on, telling me that he was being accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a student and that he was on leave from his current school. I had to end the interview and excuse myself from the room. I couldn't believe how open he was in telling me that he was, allegedly, banging an underage student. Not on HR, but a guy that was aiming to get hired in the department that I work in sent his curriculum, and the photo that he attached was of him chugging a tonic, the most cheap drink you can find and is super trashy. If you drink it too much you will go blind, and without a t-shirt on. Filed under outgoing and charismatic. I worked with a guy for a couple of years, talked to him every day, and we got along pretty well. He was a smart, well-spoken guy and even had a PhD in psychology, specifically child psychology. He had a wife and 2 young daughters, brought Girl Scout cookies to the office to sell, shared pictures from his family vacations, talked about movies and music, the normal stuff. One day he doesn't come to work. Our HR director gets everybody together to let us know that our co-worker has been arrested by the FBI and declines to go into detail. That evening on the local news his picture pops up. He was arrested for possession and dissemination of child pornography. Not weird, but first gig in HR. I worked for a company that had a restaurant attached. Teenage girl applies for a job at the restaurant. We, the company, invite her to a job interview. Mom calls, completely enraged, where we got her daughter's address from. She hasn't applied for a job with the company, blah blah. Took me 10 minutes to explain to her that restaurant name was part of company name, and because her daughter had applied to the restaurant, she would be employed by the company. A day later, getting an application for an office job, sales or something related. Handwritten. Well, okay, some people still don't have easily access to computers, but it was adorned with glitter stickers and the cover was a hand-drawn butterfly tribal. Second gig in HR. I'm interviewing a guy for a position as security officer, CSO to be precise, and he knows his stuff, but he's so freaking full of himself. At first, when I come in, he is on the phone because of a freelance gig and leaves me waiting 5 minutes. Then he tells me my name is not modern, because the cool girls are not called Catherine anymore, but Caitlin, not my real name, but something similar. Tells me how he had training events with colleagues, who can tell me how good he is at his job. When I later ask one of the colleagues, he tells me what an absolute pose the person was during the training. Needless to say that he wasn't offered the job. I had an employee who used a porta-john and was attacked by wasps and claimed disability because he couldn't wear pants due to swelling. I saw the pics and didn't dare challenge his claim. Poor guy. I used to help out the HR department at a small town law enforcement agency. We once had a woman call from a payphone, refuse to give her name, and ask if she could come in and fill out a paper application for a secretary position in the investigations department. We standardly only accepted online applications, but she was, allegedly, in the witness protection program and remarked that if she submitted an online application, then an individual who had a hit out for her could track her. Our HR manager allowed her to come in, and I had the honor of sitting down with the 2 of them before HR gave her an application. Her story is where things started getting crazy. She had 25 years of experience working for a very affluent NFL program, where she had been in charge of coordinating player travel. Over the years, she had made a lot of friends with the players, and an enemy, who just so happens to be a quarterback who has won multiple Super Bowls. He's probably one of the first 5 quarterbacks that comes to mind if somebody were to ask you who's the greatest quarterback of all time. Anyways, we were a bit doubtful that one of the most famous quarterbacks of all times had a hit for her life, but of course we tried to maintain our composure. After getting paid out by said quarterback, and then enlisting in witness protection, she ended up in our small town and wanted to apply for the investigations division department because she was psychic. Apparently she had used her psychic abilities to uncover some pretty bad dirt on the quarterback. which is why he had it out for her, and she had moved 500 miles away to escape that life, change her name, get witness protection, and start over. When she saw the position in investigations, she was confident that her psychic abilities would bring a lot of people to justice. The freakiest thing is that I mentioned something like, so what is the extent of your psychic abilities, and she responded saying, well, I know you won't be here much longer. At the time, my husband was in the process of applying for a job in a different state, and sure enough we moved away less than 3 months later. I get a laugh out of this because I still don't believe in psychics or anything, but that was quite the coincidence. Anyways, we had her fill out an application and then proceeded to run our own background check on her. We discovered she was not actually in the witness protection program, but she did indeed have 25 years of experience at that NFL team. Makes me wonder if her truth is somewhere in the middle of all that craziness. Cemetery keeper admits he buries animals that die in the cemetery in occupied graves. Police won't investigate as unlikely to be able to convict. Employer won't tackle as he is old and litigious. So someone's nana is currently bunk bedding with a muntjac, and apparently that's okay. Mayo. I wonder when archaeologists find graves with animals and conclude they were buried with their pets if it was really something more like this. I was an hour officer in the army. So many great ones. 1. Guy gets to our unit. Asks to take 5 days leave to marry his fiancée. Sure. Get notice that his wife of 9 years who lives 1,500 miles away hasn't received money or heard from him. They split, but never divorced, so he didn't have to live in the barracks and would get more money, most of which he gave to her. 2. Had an officer get a DUI. Had huge drinking problems. She was resigning in lieu of elimination. She was getting out on a Friday, but that Monday, her urinalysis came back hot for C. Sid calls her in. She waives all her rights and confesses to how she didn't mean to do coke, but after she got drunk, she thought it was a good idea. She gave Sid and our command everything needed to court-martial her. She thought if she didn't confess, they'd do an investigation and she wouldn't get out on Friday. Turns out, the only thing to stop her resignation was a court-martial. Also, she was a military police officer. 3. Got to put in a soldier's medal. The medal is the highest level medal of heroism the military gives out. Heroism is bravery in a non-combat setting, so there's higher valor awards, but the soldier's medal is a huge deal. Short version is the soldier heard screaming and a gunshot next door. Soldier breaks into the apartment, unarmed. He scares the intruder and the intruder ends up shooting himself. Turns out it was the ex-husband. He had murdered the wife and wife trying to find the 2 kids who had hid. Him barging into a gunfight unarmed, while incredibly stupid, saved their lives. 4. 3 soldiers tested positive for M. Their strategy was to report in every day at 9 PM so they couldn't be marked AWOL. Now, AWOL is instantaneous, but stopping pay is 24 absent. The commander never thought to ask me what was going on. When I found out, I stopped their pay. Not allowed, but frick them. When their pay stopped, they came in to demand justice. We had them detained for 7 days, which gave us all the time needed to separate them. They never fully out-processed, which means they are deserters and had warrants for their arrest. Almost a year later, I got a call from the nearby major city's police department saying they had picked up one of the girls for prostitution and saw we had a warrant. So much paperwork. 5. Lots of sad ones from divorces to deceased loved ones, ruined lives, suicides, rapes, child P. Lots of things too personal to share, but military HR can be a pretty wild ride. Lots of sad ones from divorces to deceased loved ones, ruined lives, suicides, rapes, child P. Lots of things too personal to share, but military HR can be a pretty wild ride. I don't doubt it. Pretty awesome story about the guy saving the 2 kids, though. What a badass. 100% deserved the medal. Not HR, but I was CTO at the time for a medical software company. One of our sales employees was working late the night before a huge proposal due the next day. I get a call at 3 AM from him saying that the computer with all the sales info had crashed and he needs it unlocked ASAP. I couldn't connect to the computer remotely and had to drive into work in the middle of the night to fix it. Turns out the guy had installed a ransomware virus while downloading suspiciously young and possibly underage P. He was fired in the morning. you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.